semester number 2, lesson number 21. Our aim today, once again, is why can FDR's presidency be considered controversial? And the same as yesterday, FDR's Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He's the president who takes over during the Great Depression. All right, and we're going to see, a lot of the things he does is to try to get America out of the Great Depression, but some of the things he does aren't technically within the means of the executive branch, and sometimes they're questioned. All right, so today we're going to look at FDR's New Deal programs. And the New Deal, as we're going to see in a second, is basically a collection of his, ideas and programs that are trying to get America out of the Great Depression. So, as I just said, the New Deal is a group of ideas and programs that Roosevelt used to try to solve the economic crisis. And all of these ideas and goals and these programs, all right, could fall into one of three categories. And those three categories are relief, recovery, and reform, the three R's. And relief is basically the immediate impact, relieve the misery of the poor and unemployed. And those include things, such as welfare, donations, whatever needed to help the unemployed and the poor right away. Recovery is the idea of bringing about recovery for businesses, rebuilding the nation, all right, and making sure that everything recovers. And the third one, which really is most important when you think long term, is reform. How do we make sure this doesn't happen again? How do we make sure the stock market doesn't crash again? How do we make sure the banks are stable? How do we make sure that people can trust their government? And reform is making changes to the economic system to prevent mistakes like those that caused the Great Depression to happen again. So a few of the reform acts that we're going to look at are the Glass-Steagall Act of 1933. This created the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, very important, the FDIC, and that's going to insure people who put their money in the bank. So today, when you put money in the bank and you have, say, a checking account or a savings account, and you have $50,000 in there, say, when you come back and you look to withdraw it, all that money needs to be there. And if it's not, you are insured on that money, meaning that you are guaranteed that money. All right. This was put in place because if you remember during the Great Depression, people put their money in the bank and they went to take it out, and the money was no longer there. So this was to ensure people's confidence in the banks. The Securities and Exchange Commission, or the SEC, they were basically put in place to regulate the stock market to ensure that nothing questionable was going on with the stock market, to make sure everything was regulated or kept, in compliance. In 1935, the Social Security Act is passed, and we still know about Social Security today. Social Security is basically a system that is set up that we pay into throughout our working lives. All right, if any of you guys work and you get a check, you see that money is taken out for Social Security. That money that is taken out for Social Security basically gives people 65 and older an income once they turn that age. So it's basically old age insurance. Once you turn 65, you are paid Social Security. And everyone is entitled to some sort of Social Security, but you're entitled to more Social Security if you worked more in your life. And the last thing is the Wagner Act of 1935, which guaranteed workers the right to unionize and engage in collective bargaining. So the Wagner Act allows workers to unionize legally and also allows them to collectively bargain or negotiate with their employer for better, wages, better working conditions, better whatever. So the FDIC, which I just broke down, is one of the first concepts. The purpose of the FDIC was to ensure the bank deposits up to $5,000, basically to ensure that to ensure that the banks were stable. All right, this was a reform. The FDIC insured people's money and restored confidence in the bank. The Public Works Administration was another New Deal program, and the purpose of this was to build bridges, dams, power plants, and government buildings. It created millions of jobs for workers. And if we remember, during the Great Depression, the unemployment was 25%. All right, so this was putting more people back to work. This was part of the recovery effort. All right, it provided jobs to many people who were out of work, and that was a positive for a lot of people. CCC, or the Civilian Conservation Corps. This provided 2 million young men with jobs replanting forest, building trails, digging irrigation ditches, and fighting fires. This was considered relief because it provided immediate help for 2 million young men. Tennessee Valley Authority, the TVA, has built a series of dams in the Tennessee River Valley to control floods and provide hydroelectric power. It was aided it aided a part of the country that was amongst the poorest in the nation. This was considered relief because it assisted the poorest parts of the country. The National Recovery Administration, or the NRA, developed codes of fair competition to govern whole industries. This was considered recovery and reform. It established minimum wage for workers and minimum prices for goods. Works Progress Administration employed millions of people on government projects ranging from highway construction to arts programs. This would fall into relief and recovery. It provided government jobs for public works. And the Agricultural Adjustment Act paid farmers to limit and raise farm prices. If you guys think about the Great Depression, one of the things was overproduction, underconsumption. This actually paid farmers to produce less crops uh, so that the price of farm goods could go up. This was considered relief because it fixed prices to even out the supply and demand and limit overproduction. We're going to see that the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, and the AAA, Agricultural Adjustment Act, are two of those programs that we discussed that the Supreme Court deems unconstitutional. We'll talk more about that in class. But if you guys think about it, why do you think the Tennessee Valley Authority and the Agricultural Adjustment Act were important? I mean, why were they important enough so that the Supreme Court viewed them as unconstitutional? So, with this in mind, I want you guys to make sure that you know a little bit about these programs and what they did. We're going to talk in a lot more detail on these tomorrow. Please come in with your higher level thinking questions on this, and we will have a discussion on this. You may have a quiz at the end of the period. I'm not sure. Have a good night.